Shouldn't we be concentrating on the ferry?
Well, yeah, it's likely that our guide cased the ferry first, but we don't know when. We don't even know what he looks like. I mean, we could stare him right in the face and not know it's him. But we will notice a change, even a small change in her life.
Look at that thing, 60 years ago. Wait a minute. Cubs won World Series. Against Miami? Yeah, it's something, huh? Who would have thought? 100 to 1 shot.
If I retreat, I may be hurt, I may be killed. I must hold my own if I'm going to stay within this land. For once there is weakness, they will exploit it, they will take me out, they will decapitate me, they will chop me into bits and pieces. I'm dead.
It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel, heading up on the holidays. So we're back again with another program with a thrilling 6 films to talk about. And I forgot, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And
we are
the Cinemaniacs. You thought he was never coming back.
Nah, it's hard to believe.
So why are you here?
I'm actually back, damn it, to explain. I guess it's been called The Great Walkout now. I think I kind of like that. That's a good idea. But in all honesty, I'll only be here briefly, and I'll turn it back over to you. As you know, but they don't know. What was it, like a month ago, 3 weeks ago, or something like that? Was going to be my last show for a while, for quite a while, because for many reasons. My son's a senior in high school. We're doing all the tours. And that's been taking a lot of time. He's always in performances and things, so I never get to see him. And it came to my realization how fast time flies and how little time I have with my kid. And so my thought was, however many weeks ago, that was going to be my last show. And then maybe once he goes off to college and everything, and you're still doing it, I'm sure, I'd love to come back. But I got to take some time off. So we sat in, and I was going to say just basically this, but somebody, I forget who it was, might have been Dave or somebody said, wouldn't it be funny if you just got out, stormed off and stuff. So we made up that whole story, as everybody, if you've all seen it and everything like that. So I do have to apologize. I'm sitting here beforehand thinking, well, what am I going to get mad about? Why am I going to storm off?
And you're like, I don't want to say anything bad about Art School Confidential. I like that movie.
Right. Well, and so the only thing I came up with, and I have to apologize to, is it Chris at MVD?
Clint.
Clint. Sorry, Clint. I'll apologize for that, too. I was just thinking about what can I argue about? And so I came up with you find all of these hard to find movies and stuff that nobody's going to watch. When in reality, my actual realization is that's what we do. We find these movies and we say, hey, you're never going to see Art School Confidential anywhere else. Go find it now. And so Arrow and all those great discs and things like that, it was exactly opposite of what I meant. But I guess you got some interesting emails calling me fun names and things like that.
I didn't know your name was Richard.
Just short for it.
Yeah, it was funny. A lot of people have thought that was real, and they asked me, is he mad? Did he leave? Oh, what are you going to do now? Right. And I said, no, it was fake.
Well, I was going to, the local sweet shop was closed. I was going to bring you a cupcake, but instead I'll bring you a big muffin.
It is the muffin of peace.
It's the muffin of peace.
That's quite a muffin.
That's a big muffin. You won't have to grab the key and go out to the bathroom for quite a while after that one. But in any event,
it does look like a stopper.
As the case may be.
Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome. So that to explain The Great Walkout and that it was all a joke. Ha! So I apologize to anybody who thought it was serious.
And you're going to wave goodbye saying, don't you cry.
You're right,
exactly. You will be back again someday.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to.
Most likely.
That being the point. So I'll turn it over to you, and you can talk to us about Spiderverse today?
Yeah, with the only opinion that you're going to hear in this room for the rest of the show. So we have the newest Marvel movie, animated Marvel movie this time, taking the Spider-Man character that you know and some Spider-Man character that you don't know and a whole lot of newness. And, well, let's just roll the trailer for Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse.
Way down in old Virginia, 300 years ago, Captain John Smith and Pocahontas shot their meat and aged it slow.
So this was a film that I was actually not really looking forward to initially. I love Spider-Man. I've loved Spider-Man since I was a kid. If I wanted to prove it, I would show you little books and records and toys and things I've had since the 70s of Spider-Man, but I don't need to prove anything to you. So the problem I had with this from the trailer that you just might have seen was that the animation looked really herky-jerky, like low frame rate, really twitchy. And my whole thing was, we've come this far in cinematic evolution and technology and how expensive these are to make, and how expensive these are to see, and why should it look that bad? So I went to the theater kind of dreading it in a way, but not far into it, I don't know if the film wasn't all that herky-jerky or if I was so taken in by the overall visual style and story and how much fun it was, but I stopped noticing that it was herky-jerky. So at any rate, that qualm was calmed. So the story basically, I don't want to say too much because this movie did things that if I didn't know it was going to do, would have been wonderful surprises, but more and more trailers and advertising really push the fact that let's say there's more than one Spider-Man in this movie. So yes, this is not Peter Parker as Spider-Man. This is a pretty ingenious way to answer all those people who, like with James Bond, say we need a black James Bond, we need a Latino James Bond, we need a female James Bond. Well, this is a way to do that. And I think it actually works better doing this in a cartoon because you're not stepping into the same world we've seen before in movies, live action movies. So you have this kid, Miles Morales, which is a name I'd heard because this has been a Spider-Man character in comics for a few years at least. And he's an average kid and he gets bitten by a radioactive spider and discovers that he has the same abilities that Peter Parker does. And I really don't want to say much more than that. So this is another origin story, but it's not the origin story you've seen. It traffics in a lot of familiar characters in the Spiderverse, as it were, but maybe not familiar in the way you might know them if you just know the movies or the old comic books. It has a really amazing visual style. Part of it is colors. I like pretty colors. This uses, some people say this is intended to look like a living comic book, but it uses a lot of colors that are off that 4-color palette, a lot more neon-y, pastel-y colors. It does some pretty amazing things visually, and it's a mix of like 2D cell animation, hand-drawn, and CGI animation with like a skin that makes it look hand-drawn. Some comic book, Biff Pow kind of stuff here and there. It is a lot to take in, not in a bad way. A lot of animation for me, post-90s Disney, is too fast and too hyper-kinetic, and I just can't get into it. This has a lot going on, but in a good way. The action sequences are really good action sequences. It's very funny. It's really all ages appropriate. There's nothing really, there's violence in it and there's some dark themes, but there's nothing untoward in this film. I would not say necessarily that it's a kid's movie. I went in as a theoretical adult and it was operating on my level the whole time. It made references to a lot of things from various incarnations of Spider-Man past that I really appreciated, that they took a little nod to or a little poke at. There is a post-credit sequence that it probably means more if you know Spider-Man going back to the 60s, but it's pretty darn funny. And it is very, very dramatic. It is thrilling. It is funny. It's imaginative. It does things visually I've never seen before. It makes me want a lot more of this Spider-Verse stuff. And it's sort of done in an ingenious way, and ingenious if not calculated, in that this could spin off into more films about the Miles Morales character. That seems to be the given with this. It could spin off into more films about the other characters in the movie that I think would be equally as compelling. So the movie's pretty long. This was roughly about 2 hours. I was never bored. It had me from the moment the opening Columbia Sony logo came up. This is definitely one to see on the big screen because there's so much detail and the visuals are so amazing. I kept thinking of Yellow Submarine when I watched this because people who indulge in certain things will probably get a lot out of this movie. Let's just say that much. Not intended probably that way, but it is a phantasmagorical experience. And I thought it was fantastic. I've heard nobody say, well, actually Tom was saying he didn't think it was that great, but he had logic issues with it. But everybody I know has been, had their minds blown by it and they want to go see it again and again. So pretty highly recommend Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I think if you're not a fan of these movies, you'd still probably, like if you don't have a lot of knowledge of superhero movies, they always do a good job of explaining the background. But if you do have a knowledge of Spider-Man from the past, I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So up next, hey, that's all that we have to talk about in the theaters because that's all our local theater got that was new this week. Next week there's going to be 4, so I'll be rambling rambunctiously trying to fit it all in. within an hour. So on video, in the format, device, service, platform of your choice, is a film that I saw in the theater that was not a very wide release, so it's probably new to you on video. Tells the tale of what happens when social media bullying and exposing and shaming gets way out of hand and devolves into an Assassination Nation.
Just a few easy strokes of the comb.
Anybody want a muffin?
And away to win the hand of fair Lady Ellen. And she's rich, too.
So as much as Spiderverse was for all ages, Assassination Nation, not quite. No, this is more teens and adults. And by teens, I mean mid to upper teens. So it's very interesting, though. It's very much a social comment kind of movie where you have, as I said before, if you're tuning in late, some social media posting, somebody gets exposed for having, photos on their hard drive or a search on their computer or whatever, and it goes around, and I believe it's a teacher, and then blame keeps getting shifted to other people as to who did this and who's ruining lives, and it says a lot about social media and about the hive or the group mentality or social media bullying, where people hear something they don't like and they en masse leap upon somebody and try to ruin their life, and then maybe later find out that maybe that wasn't quite accurate, the basis of what their ire is coming from. So you have, it's a set of teens, set of girlfriends, one of which is a trans individual, which is treated totally normally, which is cool. I didn't even realize it until partway into the movie, and that comes up story-wise in the film. And it's basically these kids who are, it reminded me of, well, it's a film whose title I don't remember, but it was another good movie that was vaguely similar I saw earlier this year. Tragedy Girls, vaguely similar to that. So it starts off pretty light, and then it gets darker and darker, where you're almost into like a purge situation toward the end, where everybody is getting, whatever weapons they can get their hands on and torches and going after people in their community who were previously friends and neighbors who suddenly are the other. So it says a lot about our culture now. It says a lot about just the human condition, things that we wish we could change about ourselves and each other. And it is not for kids, but that is out now on video. Up next is a film that is more for the whole family. We're kind of yo-yo. It's ping-ponging. It's a pong game as to what is and isn't appropriate for kids. We have the latest Michael Moore documentary. A lot of people have just changed the channel. The latest Michael Moore documentary about the ills of the world and how we can potentially solve them, and it all leads down to Farenheit 11.9.
Look, Mom, his block is knocked off. His block is knocked off?
Pay no attention to that trailer. So, this is yet another Michael Moore documentary, and a lot of people are like, yay, he's going to put it to the man, and other people are like, he's an evil traitor person. He has a lot of baggage with him, for better or worse. Probably for his cause, for worse at this point. I've always enjoyed the Michael Moore documentaries. I like what he has to say. I don't always like the way he goes about saying it. He does a lot of stunt, ambush journalism and stuff that can come off as sort of cheap and done for effect. But I like the message he puts through in these. So when I went to see this, from the trailer and overall, you expect this is going to be an anti-Trump film. It is, but that's not really what it is. It starts off with that, and then it goes off in all these other directions, which may be a strength, it may be a weakness. Basically, he's looking at a lot of problems in our country right now, or when the film was made not long ago. And what's great is he's not just saying this is wrong and these people are evil and terrible. He's saying this is wrong and these people are terrible, but this is how we can go about trying to fix it. So this is really more a film about activism. You see him with local groups who are trying to, solve the water in Flint problem. Always comes back to Flint. You see local politicians who are atypical candidates who are trying to, make a change in Washington. You see people who are trying to deal with gun violence. You see people who are trying to deal with various ills. So it almost reminds me of his old TV Nation show, where it's really about all kinds of stuff, and there's an overarching theme of activism and getting out there, getting off your duff and trying to make the world a better place, which I know to some is a terrible message. What's interesting now when I watch the trailer and when you watch the movie is that two of the people who were profiled as candidates running for office actually won and are now in Washington attempting to do what they say they want to do. So we'll see how that all pans out. I quite enjoyed this for what it was. It's not always pleasant. It's one of those things that makes you shed a gentle tear for where we're at in the country. But at the same time, it's not just saying what's wrong, it's saying here's how we can attempt to fix it. And I like that quite a bit. So Farenheit 11.9 is out now. Some of you are going to rush to see it, and some of you are never going to watch it, but at least it's there if you decide to do so. Now we'll whiffle over here, and I will slyly look and see what the next thing is. Oh, speaking of films a lot of people hated, here is a film that is a sequel to a long-running action horror sci-fi series that started back in 1987, and the latest installment features an alien from outer space coming down to coming down to Earth and America to hunt for sport. That one would be known as the Predator.
Horse, goat, duck, sheep.
Again, I always say, boy, it's really lame when movies are just called something for. And then years later, I'm like, they don't have a number at the end of it. Which film is this in the series? I don't know. So you had Predator back in '87 with Schwarzenegger and a bunch of tough guys. And then you had Predator 2 with Danny Glover and Ruben Blades. And then you started having Alien versus Predator and Predator versus Alien and Strawberry Shortcake versus Predator and all this other stuff. So we are now back down to The Predator. A lot of people didn't like this movie. I say I'm not a fan of the Predator movies. It doesn't mean I don't like them. I just don't really care about them that much. I didn't see the original at a time where it made the impression on me that it tends to make on a lot of people. A lot of people revere that movie really highly. I've always thought it was just fine, but it's not. I'm a Commando guy. What can I say? So people were really offended at this movie, The Predator. Big deal that it was directed by Shane Black, who was in the original Predator, wrote a lot of big 80s movies, directed some really good 80s and more recent action and comedy movies like The Nice Guys, which I loved. Shane Black's back directing, co-writing with Fred Decker, who did things like Monster Squad and Night of the Creeps back in the 80s. So it's a lot of 80s cred, 80s genre movie cred in this. And most people really hated it. A lot of the fans really hated it. Everybody thought it was really stupid. I went to see it at a drive-in, a double feature with, I don't even remember what I saw this, Peppermint from last week. And I thought it was fun. I saw it at the drive-in. I was by myself. I had eaten really, they had this deal where it was the end of the season, and if you bought an ice cream, it was 2 for 1, and I didn't really know that, but I'd already ordered, and I'm like, let's see how much I can eat. And I had like 2 ice creams this big. So maybe it's the 2 Flavor Burst strawberry ice creams that were like 4 pounds of ice cream in my stomach that made me like this so much. But I thought it was very funny. I thought it moved right along. Some people had issues with the CGI and special effects. It might have been one of those things where, while the projection was really good at that drive-in, sometimes it's a little dimmer at a drive-in. And when I saw the original Hulk movie, a lot of, I think, the bad CGI was masked by the picture being a little dim, so it was sort of more in shadow, so that might have been it. But I just thought it was a heck of a lot of fun for a movie, for a series I don't care that much about. It's certainly a good bubblegummy drive-in movie to have, cheeseburger in your hand while you're eating it. Cast of people you do and don't know. The biggest names are probably Thomas Jane as a PTSD, Tourette's-laden vet who's part of this team of inconceivables who goes out to try to solve the problem of the Predator, and Olivia Munn, who's been in a lot of things, and she's sort of the hero, literally the hero scientist who pistol packing mama. I don't know that they ever really explain why she's so good with a shotgun and grenades, but she is. It makes it a lot more convenient. So basically, the Predator and Predators are hunting with these weird hybrid animals on Earth, and these people are trying to figure out what this thing is and stop it. Not a lot more to it than that. There's some high-minded things about predator evolution and a kid with an autistic son and all this other stuff, but ultimately it's a bubblegum movie to me, which means it's got a real strong burst of flavor, and when you're done with it and the flavor's gone, you throw it away and you never think about it again. So I enjoyed The Predator. I haven't seen the Alien versus Predator movies. I might someday, but I'm in no rush. There are still Ernest movies left that I haven't seen, so we'll wait for the rest of the Predator movies. Okay, now up to, sorry while I look down away from, you can admire my haircut. We have a classier film, a film directed by Mr. Paul Feig, who's known for female-centric comedies that are generally too long. Here we have Blake Lively and Kendrick and Henry Golding, who people would know from Crazy Rich Asians, among other things. And it is a twisty-turny tale of death and murder and duplicity and friendship and betrayal, and it all revolves around a simple favor.
Hey, Luigi, the beats expert, will now create the perfect
Quackers.
So this is another one where, okay, me on this show is 2 things. It's me telling you what I think of stuff, which, why should you care, frankly? It's cool that you do, but I mean, you're going to have your own taste on things. and telling you what something really is, because sometimes things are sort of deceptively advertised. So this is one, I say that because this is one that I didn't really care for, but most people really liked a lot. So the story is Anna Kendrick is a very supermom, kind of mousy, very conservative in terms of she's very tightly wound. And she meets Blake Lively, who's this free spirit, doesn't care, renegade, not a very good mom, frankly. And they sort of have a friendship, the opposites attracting thing. And Kendrick is really inspired to be more outward and live more of her life through Lively. And then suddenly Lively disappears. So this becomes a mystery. Is she dead? How did she die? Who did it? Why? All this stuff. And she tries to unravel the mystery of this friend's life that was very secretive, and she doesn't want photos and all that sort of thing. So it's very, the trailer in the film itself uses a lot of French music, so it's trying to be very European, I wouldn't say new wave, but European mystery, Hitchcockian kind of thing, which is cool, but it also wants to be a comedy, and that didn't work for me. The uneven tone of you're taking this really seriously and then something silly happens. I'm like, well, I don't know if I feel like laughing after this last thing, and it seemed inappropriate to me. The cast in the film is good. It's really nicely shot, really good music, but I wasn't really into it. And maybe I have a beef with Paul Feig because he tends to make movies I don't like that are too long. And this was probably another one of those. That might be my own baggage that I bring to it. And there are moments where, a character who is well, I don't want to say too much, but things happen that don't make any sense in terms of what's supposed to be happening in the movie. It is very twisty and turny. It attempts to surprise you very much, very often in the film. This is probably one that females more than males will be into for whatever reason. But I didn't really care for it. It's also, it tries to be edgy at times, whether it's through language or content or explicitness or whatever, and it felt forced to me, like, ooh, we're doing this, as opposed to just it being natural in the movie. So take that as you will. A lot of people really liked it. I think if you're up for a sort of I don't think it's a bad movie, I just didn't care for it. So I think it's the kind where if you want some surprises and you go in knowing almost nothing, like with any movie, it's gonna work a lot better for you. If you like the leads, you have plenty of them in this movie. If you like Henry Golding from the male lead in Crazy Rich Asians, he's the husband in this film, and he's quite good, and you don't quite know what to make of him in the film dramatically, which is good. So A Simple Favor is there. It is very atypical in the filmography of Mr. Paul Feig. So now wow. Hi. We do that so that you know that it's actual human beings who are doing the show. When I used to simply just watch the show, I loved it when things went quirky because it wasn't just clean and antiseptic and bland. It was fun. So it's all Ernie's fault. And here's his address: 1313 Mockingbird Lane. See you there. So we have a film that not really for the family, but it's a Marvel movie. It's arguably the worst Marvel movie to me. Not to put the cart before the horse here. We have Tom Hardy playing a faux American journalist, muckraking, investigative journalist who winds up getting an alien symbiote attached to his person inside and out. And in moments of stress or moments of need, he becomes that which we will call heretofore Venom.
Look sharp, feel sharp, be sharp and listen, mister, how you fix for blades.
So if you remember the much maligned Spider-Man 3, which I liked despite some minor problems, Venom was a character in that. It's a character from the Spiderverse, to tie it all back. We kind of bookend it with Spider-Man stuff this week. So Venom was a character in Spider-Man, and I don't know too much about it beyond what happened in Spider-Man 3, however accurate or inaccurate that was. Here we divorced that character from Spider-Man entirely. This is Eddie Brock, who in Spider-Man 3 was played by Topher Grace, and it was the same basic idea. But there's no superhero in this movie. It's a supervillain movie, which is interesting. It's the first Marvel movie that I know of where there's no real good guy. It's an anti-hero thing where it's this guy who's struggling with this thing inside him that it's very much like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing, where sometimes Venom, he's struggling to keep Venom contained within himself, and sometimes Venom takes over and eradicates people and does things and gets revenge, and sometimes it doesn't. And he's a very tortured soul. And I I didn't think it was very good. I didn't find it funny when it was trying to be. All the humor was very much the kind of thing a 14-year-old, not terribly intelligent kid would think is funny. And the CGI, I don't really like CGI that much. I think that's why Spiderverse works so well, is it's an animated world, so you don't have that problem where the CGI or the special effects don't look like they mesh with the real world because it's all one world. Here the CGI, it just looked really cheesy to me. Some of the action sequences, like in the trailer where he's jumping a motorcycle and he separates from the motorcycle with his and the Venom pulls him back together, were just laughable to me. Maybe they were supposed to be funny. I don't really know. This was one where I was ready for the movie to be done well before it was. It reminded me of too many other better movies in terms of that whole, something is trying to get out from inside somebody that the person wants to keep contained and all that stuff. You have Michelle Williams as the ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, and that's not much of a role for her really. And I just thought it was kind of a drag. I would be surprised. I don't think this did terribly well, so I would be surprised if we see another Venom standalone movie. It's a cool character, and it's a character a lot of the fans like, so I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we saw Venom worked into another Spider-Man film or into an Avengers movie or something like that, but I can't see, success-wise for this, I can't see too many more of these standalone Venom movies. And it makes me wonder if we're going to see many other standalone films that are about villains by themselves. I know DC is working on a Joker movie, so that at long last, the Joker can be brought to the screen, starring, I don't remember, Joaquin Phoenix, I think, which is not a bad idea, but I mean, we've seen the Joker a lot. So that's DC, though, and DC has their own hurdles to overcome. I don't know if DC will ever get back to the heights. Well, I guess the Christopher Nolan Batman movies were popular. I didn't like them, but those were huge. So they have those to sort of, their last cultural touchstone was not, the Burton Batmans and the Reeves Supermans. They've got something more recent than that. But we'll see when Aquaman comes out next week. And I think that'll do well, but for reasons other than anything other to do with it than other than the guy who's not wearing a shirt in the movie. So Venom is out now. If you choose to see it, you might like it. Some people did. I just didn't care for it myself. It's one of those things. And then we whiffle over this away. I think we whiffle. Hey, how are you? We move on to what I like to say is my favorite part of the show. This is where I talk about movies that are right in my, let's see, someday I'll learn how to do that too. Very interesting, The Man Who's Over My Shoulder, because I'm about to flee southward to watch a movie starring that character. So we have the Arrow Video Corner, where we talk about the new releases of old films from Arrow Video and Arrow Academy. They put out some, Arrow is my criterion, I like to say. These are the movies that I love, done in the most deluxe and best treatment possible, with cover art that I actually enjoy, unlike Criterion. So this week we have a film, and you'd think I would remember what it was. Oh, it's this one. This is a movie that I never knew until about a year ago, when I bought an edition from another company, and I kind of fell in love with it. And then when I saw that Arrow was putting out, I promptly sold my other one, and I got really excited because this is a film, it's a killer kid movie. Don't you love those? Fun for the whole family. This is a story of 3 children who are born during an eclipse and who grow up to be very bad seeds. They are not good sons. They are evil little kids, evil little children. They are children of the damned, and this film is entitled Bloody Birthday.
Oh, station fire!
Boys, get your own battery-operated battle wagon.
So I'd never heard, I don't know how I didn't see this when I was renting VHS tapes every weekend at my video store through junior high and high school and college. I don't know how Bloody Birthday eluded me. I didn't see it until I had picked up the Severin edition, Severin Films, which does great work. They had it out for a long time, and I picked that up and watched it, and I was kind of blown away by how good this is. So this new Arrow edition, we have a gorgeous transfer, great audio, and the film is just nuts. It does not waste any time. It's not this slow build-up and where you wonder which kids are the bad kids. It's like out of the gate, there's a shovel killing. And you know me, if you know me and you've watched this show long enough, you know I love a good shovel killing. And there are other crazy ways they do people in, and it's not like the movie The Children, where they're kind of like zombies, or Children of the Damned, where they're really weird. They're like normal kids that are just nasty. They're just like the ultimate brats who just decide they don't like somebody, and they just off them in any manner of ways. They're smart, they're calculated, they're manipulative, and you can't wait to see them get their comeuppance if they do. And it's some of the ways that they off people are pretty creative. And I'm watching this movie again this weekend, and I keep thinking, well, there's going to be a lot of downtime between the killings. No, there's very little. This is a pretty tight 90-minute movie, and they do some pretty serious damage to people that you think might not have damage done to them in the film. For people who were MTV viewers in the 80s, early 90s, and remember Julie Brown, she was a comedian. There were two Julie Browns. There was Julie Brown, and there was Downtown Julie Brown. Julie Brown was the comedian. She was in Earth Girls Are Easy, and she's been in a lot of things over the years. She had the song that used to be really funny called Homecoming Queen's Got a Gun, probably less funny now, and other things like that. She's in this film, pretty early role, and not to be shallow, but if you ever wanted to see Julie Brown naked, this is the movie to purchase and see. She is the woman who, her younger sister is offering Peeps from a hole in the closet to her friends for 50 cents so they can watch her sister dance naked. And ultimately, if you saw the trailer, something else very unfortunate happens through that hole. So the film also features some people you would recognize. Joe Penny, who would go on to be on Jake and the Fat Man and Riptide, has a pretty small role. Jose Ferrer has a pretty small role. And everybody else are pretty much the kids and a couple of the adults that don't live. Susan Strasberg is in it. And one of the kids, Billy Jacoby, a.k.a. Billy Jane or William Jane, you might recognize from being in a lot of, he might have been on Parker Lewis Can't Lose. He was in a lot of stuff as the 80s went into the 90s. Slightly different name here. And this movie is a blast. I thought it's funny. I don't know that it's intentionally funny, but it has such a wonderful, malevolent spirit to it that you kind of giggle when these kids are doing their dark deeds. And again, like I said, it's not very long. It's shot, I think, around 1980, 79 or 80, so it has that early 80s feel. It fits right in with all the other slasher movies of the time, and it's one of the best killer kid movies that I know about. So definitely one to try to get now and put under the Christmas tree, for the tots in the family. Just to say, don't ever do this, kids. Don't kill your family. It's inappropriate, especially around the holidays. So extras. It's Arrow, so there are extras. So you have a commentary on the film by the director. You have the man who wrote the film talking about it, wrote or produced the film talking about it. You have a trailer, you have a promo trailer, you have all kinds of stuff like that. And you have an interview with the woman who plays the responsible adult in the film. And she plays the older sister and the babysitter and all of that. So it's cool to hear somebody who was in the film talk about what that experience was like and reflect 20, 30 more years later back on what that was like. So it's a very nice addition from Arrow. I said I had the Severin Films version previously. I don't still have that to compare. I can't tell what a huge difference it is transfer-wise. I feel like the Arrow version is probably a little bit better, but it's not night and day. Sometimes you see transfers that the movie looks like it was shot yesterday. It does, but I seem to recall the Severin one looking good too. This is more doable if you don't have the Severin, which I think is out of print. And if you want the extras that version did not have, then they're all there on the Arrow. That is all that I have that is new to you or me to discuss. I watched a few other things, but I won't bore you with that because they're movies you can't see. I actually thought about doing a segment on the show calling Movies You Can't See. And I'll talk about films that I found in weird areas and weird places and then put you on the hunt for finding these things that you can't just go by. But I won't do that because that's a little cruel. Next week, we have a huge number of films to talk about. This weekend, 2 movies came out. Next weekend, at least 4 movies come out. You have Bumblebee, which is the new Transformers prequel. You have Mary Poppins Returns, which I highly suspect is a remake with subtle adjectives changed. You have Welcome to Marwen with Steve Carell, which is a narrative, fanciful version of a film called Marwen Call, which was about a man who has traumatic brain injury and creates these little worlds out of dolls and action figures that are about these little World War II missions, and he takes photos of them. Well, this is a Robert Zemeckis, special effects laden version of that. And we also have that Aquaman thing that a lot of folks are excited about. Me not being one of them, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be fun. I thought Justice League was fun. Not great, but fun, so we'll see. So until next week, I remain me, I remain Mark, and I remain the Cinemaniac.